Hello.
Hello, my wife.
Hi, hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you on
Thank you.
Kinky Friday.
That's right, Kinky Friday. Nice to see you as well, my lovely one. hmm
Have you had a good week?
Uh, I've had a very productive week.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
good.
so that's not bad, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Productive is nice, especially
how,
if you needed to have a productive week.
I did. I like to procrastinate. How about you?
I think I've had a good week. I've sort of had a busy week. I had a lot of clients this week, and
Mhm.
I'm doing a spot of domestic, let's say, renovations. I'm upgrading my furniture.
That's
So
right.
I'm currently sitting in a very empty room, but I just received a delivery just now, and I'm excited to rip into it any
Awesome,
moment. Well, not
awesome.
right now, but
Not
I'm
right
going to
now.
wait
No,
until we've done this because
no.
kinky sex is more important than my imminent delivery, but it's in the door and that's
This is
fine.
true. This is
And
true.
I've just got to qualify that today there's a lot of noise outside for some reason today, more than normal.
Okay.
So if it sounds like I'm in New York City, it's because I am.
There you
Today is very noisy.
go. All right. All right. Well, so everybody today, as you know, is about kink. Any questions you have about kink, just put them into the comment area
hmm
because we'll be happy to do our best to answer them. I,
Yes.
I have to say, this isn't my specialty. This isn't my particular area.
Mm.
So, I mean, I know enough, but it's not something that I actively study. So,
hmm
I might be asking you a lot of questions, just so you know.
Yeah.
I might not know the answers,
That's okay. That's
you know?
fine. Yeah. I mean, and I think, just to qualify for people, kink can be kind of anything, you
Mhm.
know. And I mean, I think we tend to think of, kinky people as this separate sort of cohort of people, which I think, to a degree, that's partially true,
Mhm.
depending on the kinds of things that they like. So, perhaps people who are into BDSM, which
Mhm.
is bondage, discipline, and sadomasochism is one of the versions of the BDSM acronym, who are people who are into, perhaps more extreme activities that don't necessarily involve genitals. They
Mhm.
can be, a group unto themselves. And then there's also, people who enjoy what would be considered more traditional sex or vanilla kind of sex, who also may get into that. So these things are not mutually exclusive. You can like a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But today's discussion is really about if you want to, anything from mild to wild, and also, to understand too that once upon a time kinky sex was pathologized.
Yes.
People used to say that people who were into kinky stuff were, perverts, and it was considered a bad thing. I think some of that stigma has died off a bit now,
I
you
mean, if
know?
we have anyone to thank for any of the mainstream, it sadly is the 50 Shades of Grey franchise.
Right.
Ironic because it's so not what we should be doing. But I think
Yeah.
also it's important to make a distinction between kink and fetish. And from
Right.
what I learned is that fetish is something that you absolutely need to get off.
hmm hmm
And kink is exploration of things outside of vanilla sex, outside of
Yeah.
the norm.
Yeah.
So something like all fetishes are kinks, but not all kinks are fetishes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's how that distinction is made, that, a fetish might be, you might be really into feet, or you might be into shoes, or you might be into, um,
Red
spanking,
hair.
or like
Yeah.
a red hair, right? Or, but then I think you can also say, you're really into, um, big dicks, or big dildos, or big boobs, or big
Mhm.
whatevers. I mean, these are all versions of fetishes as
Yeah.
well. So it's not, it doesn't have to be extreme to be a fetish. And then I guess people could sort of argue, well, is it a preference? Is it a fetish?
Yeah.
That's all very subjective. I don't think that there's one kind of, well, let me just reference my trusty, diagnostic book here. It's
Right.
really, it's how it is for you. It's what
Yeah.
matters to you, and as always, as we say, you and I being we, and we the people, all of us,
Mhm.
pleasure. Does it
Yeah.
make you feel good?
Does it
Consent,
make you feel
pleasure, let's go. Anything
exactly?
goes.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I got a question DM to me. Um, this person is more satisfied masturbating to porn and getting off than
Yeah.
having sex with their wife.
Mm-hmm.
And is that normal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I would say, is it normal? Yes, it's normal.
Yeah.
Is it a problem? Potentially,
Mm-hmm.
because it depends on the other things going on in your relationship with your wife. Part of the reason that some people, and this is not gender specific, though it does tend to affect cis men more than other groups, but it's not only cis men, where there can, often in a long-term relationship, especially if the relationship is monogamous, that there can sometimes be a preference toward masturbation and porn rather than interactive partner sex. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It could be because there are pressures in talking about sex in the relationship that make it too hard to talk about it. And so it's just easier to jerk off and watch porn, right? And that is a kind of, a way of addressing a problem, sort of by not addressing the problem in a little bit, But that's sometimes what it can be, is just, it can be, a screen is not going to talk back to you. A screen is not going to tell you their feelings. A screen is not going to, expect you to do anything. All you have to do is turn up and sort yourself out, and then it's done. And in terms of a masturbation practice, that's fine. But the trouble with that as a long-term plan is that if you're going to have a sexual relationship with another living, breathing human being,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be able to talk about what's going on between you. And so for this person who sent in that question, thank you for saying it, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you are not the only person
Yeah.
who is watching this who thinks, oh gosh, that's me. Um, how you deal with that and how you address it is ultimately going to be up to you. And it really comes down to whether or not this is the kind of relationship you think is okay. Like, do you think it's okay to be in a relationship where you and your partner don't talk about sex with each other? Is that
Right.
really the kind of relationship you want to be in? My hunch is probably not.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's because you think, well, I don't know how to, or I don't know what to say, or I try to and I feel like I don't get heard, or whatever it is, there's a lot of layers that go on with this. Know that it's work withable,
Mm-hmm.
and so preferring porn to your partner is not uncommon, and so therefore it's normal. But I don't know long term how nourishing and how fulfilling that's going to be for you, even if in the short term it feels like it's scratching an itch. I reckon long term it might get a bit lonely.
Yeah. I think it's a good point too to bring up as we go into this next question, to bring up the idea of the yes, no, maybe list.
Mm-hmm.
There is this list. You can actually download it free from my website, lchase.com, under resources. But what it is it's a list of things that you might want to do in the sack. And they can go from just sort of vanilla sex to extreme kinks. It can go
Mm-hmm.
anywhere you want it to go.
Yeah.
And it's really sitting down with your partner and communicating and having them fill one out and you fill one out and then comparing, like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you into? Are you into golden showers? Yes. Or no, or maybe. And maybe means maybe
Mm.
I'll think about that in the future. Maybe that's
Yeah.
something that is curious to me. Because the next question we got is, how do you bring up wanting to try something kinky with your partner?
Mm. So I have my bog standard answer to that question is to blame me
good.
say
I
I
always
was,
blame you.
yeah, always. When in doubt, just blame me. I'm totally up for it.
Yeah.
You can say, I was watching Cyndi and Elle on Instagram, and they were talking about kinky sex, and it got me thinking that maybe I'd like to try something. What do you think about that, honey?
Mm-hmm.
That's how you can start it. Blame
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Mm.
And what happens if you bring that up with your partner and your partner says it's sort of not so much shaming, but just sort of little judgy, maybe like, I never knew you were
Mm.
into that, and
Mm.
really, or yucking their yum to some
Yeah.
extent. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's difficult because, often when that happens, the person who has sort of said, hey, I was watching Elle and Cyndi on Instagram, then sort of feels like, I better not say any more in case, I say the wrong thing, or this is obviously a touchy subject.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be a thing about, well, if it's, I didn't know you were into that, you could respond with, well, perhaps I didn't know I was either, but it just got me thinking. And I'm not saying that we have to do anything. I just want to invite you into a conversation. Could we talk about perhaps, how our sex life is?
Mm-hmm.
Are we happy with what's happening? And I think sometimes folks are even scared to have that conversation because it's like, what happens if we find out that our sex life is not great?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it might be that, but isn't it better to know now rather than in 40 years when you're just like, oh my God, you again? Like, that'd be worse, I reckon. And part of getting used to talking about sex is practicing doing it. And so if your partner says to you, I didn't know you were into that. I mean, if you have actually really been withholding this big secret, then that's a slightly different thing. But if it's just that you're like, maybe I'd like to try hair pulling, or I'd like to have you call me names, or I'd like to, bring in the guy who delivers our vegetables, like whatever it is, I don't know. I mean, there's so many things, so it really depends. And it might be helpful then for your partner who perhaps is suspicious of, like, I didn't know you were into that, like find out, well, what is that they think you're into? So, because again, kink it really can be anything. And maybe they're thinking that you're into something really out there, again, subjective. But all you're saying is, I just want to get into a bit of butt slapping and hair pulling.
Yeah.
And a little bit of spitting.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll be like, oh, is that all? Oh, that's fine.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So get specific.
Yeah. And because I think anything that someone who doesn't know what you're talking about is thinking is probably a lot more severe than what you may be saying.
Yeah.
It's open to interpretation if you don't explain it. So explaining it and explaining it kindly. I think that sometimes what people will do is that idea of a compliment sandwich, where, you've had sex, whatever, now you're in the kitchen and you're making food. And it's like, I really love when you kiss me behind the ear. I love it when you do that. And what I would love too is if while you're doing that, you would spank my ass. That would be great. And all of those things together, I just can't think of anything better than to experience that with you. I mean, that's corny what I'm saying, but you get it.
Yeah. No, and it's the thing, and I think especially with kink stuff, it's especially important that we bring it up when we're not in the middle of sex. That's really important.
And
because if you're in the if you're in the middle of doing, your sexy routine, whatever it is, and then you say, hey, let's do this thing that may be challenging for your partner to hear. Doing it when they're nude and vulnerable is not the best time to bring it up. It's much more useful to bring it up over dinner or over lunch when you've got your clothes on and there's perhaps a table between you, and you can get a little bit of, padding, emotional padding before you hit them with this request. And it also gives them time to process it too, because if it in the middle of sex and you give them the request and it lands on them perhaps much more strongly than you intended, it doesn't bode well for them to say yes down the track, because it's like, oh, the nervous system responds with, wow, that was jarring and shocking. When you can, choose your time wisely, you have a much better chance of the conversation opening up and going well. And then because you've pre-discussed it, you've pre-agreed to it, you're like, yeah, let's get into hair pulling and spitting. Then when you do go into bed or into wherever you go to do your thing, and you're like, yeah, and you start doing the hair pulling and the spitting and the whatever, then they know where it's coming from, and it's, it's been prearranged. So
yeah, definitely before you try anything, you want to talk it over. Let's see here. And I think we kind of answered this, but can people with kinks or fetishes enjoy sex without incorporating it? Like I remember when I was years ago. When
Can
I was
vegetarians enjoy bread? Yes, if they're not vegetables. That's a terrible example.
Terrible example. But I think too, like, people will often say, well, I'm kinky, but I can also have vanilla sex. I'm perfectly satisfied doing vanilla sex.
Right.
Like, don't worry, I'm not going to scare you away with liking being, smacked with a fly swatter, I think thinking of kink as just almost in the same ways that we think of just different positions, that sort of, regularity about it, because I guarantee you it's a lot more popular and a lot more people are doing some form of kink than you might realize.
Yeah, absolutely. I think more people do kinky things than don't do kinky things.
I agree.
And maybe they just don't call it kink, they just call it sex, which is kind of what it is.
Exactly. It'd be accurate.
Yeah. So it's really helpful, I think, to start thinking about sex as not just traditional penis and vagina sex, but to start thinking about sex as a menu of things, including using floggers and clamps and electro stim toys, and and also engaging different senses, so leather folks really get off on the texture of leather and the smell of leather and the color of it. And and also kink too doesn't even have to be about activities. It can be about dynamics. Power is a huge turn on for people. And even again, like in vanilla contexts, power is an aphrodisiac. How many straight women want to just be done by a man,
ravished?
What's that? That's a power dynamic, but we pretend that that's not kink. That's fucking kinky. Like, it's and it's great for those who are into it. Awesome. But that's a version of kink. So sometimes, kink has gotten tangled up in being this sort of very extreme end of the spectrum, which it can be that too. But a lot of what is power play really can come under the kink umbrella, I think.
And sometimes kink, for a lot of people, doesn't even include any sort of sexual play. For some people, it is the aesthetic of it. It is the environs of going to a dungeon and tying someone up and doing a scene and, flogging them. And also kinksters are the people that I know are the most versed in consent. Yeah, because when it's huge,
the absolute best.
It's the best. If you ever want consent explained to you, find someone who's kinky, because they know exactly how to do it and what it is. Because you need it. If you're playing with things that are supposed to cause pain, or speaking in ways that could be triggering for some people, you need to be able to communicate that and get agreements. There's that consent piece. If anyone else has any questions, we've got a few more minutes here, and would love to take advantage of Cyndi's brain and get some questions answered. There's nothing too simple or hard.
No. Oops, I am trying to get these questions and comments up.
I don't see
Why
comments
is
yet.
my thing?
I don't see any comments
Ah,
yet.
somebody's saying this is so informative, Elle and Cyndi. Thank
Oh,
you. Wellbe app. Thanks, Wellbe app.
Wellbe is where, if you want coaching from me or me to answer a question, you can go to Wellbe and look me up and book some time.
Nice.
So yeah, so there's
Nice.
that. What else can we talk about? About kink.
Mm.
I think that some people also get confused, and this might not be kink, but I think it kind of is in a weird way.
Mm.
Is straight people who watch gay porn
Uh-huh.
and gay folks that watch straight porn.
Yeah.
I have been spoken to before about that being a kink, and really liking watching it and why.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you think about that.
I think it's extremely common. In fact, I know it's extremely common because, again, you know, the binaries of straight and gay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of people don't know this. I mean, straightness or heterosexuality rather, and gayness have existed for thousands of years. People
Yeah.
have been fucking in all kinds of configurations since we
Yeah.
crawled out of the swamp. So there's that.
Right.
But the actual notions of straight and gay and you know, heterosexual and homosexual, these words that we use are relatively recent. They really only came about in the last sort of 120 years or so. Prior to that, activities between various genders existed, but they didn't necessarily have these caveats and names that we put on them now.
Mm-hmm.
And part of, you know, there's pluses and minuses on both sides. So part of the plus side of having names for our identities and orientations is it gives us a sense of identity, it gives us community, it gives us, you know, a feeling that, you know, there are more people like me in the world. But then on the flip side, for some people, it feels restrictive, it feels inaccurate, it feels like I've got to choose.
Mm-hmm.
And so what it also does is it makes us start to feel like, well, if I'm straight or if I'm heterosexual, then I can only be turned on by this. Or if
Right.
I'm gay, then I can only be turned on by that. But the truth is, and especially what we're discovering more of now, and Kinsey found this
Mm-hmm.
back when he was doing his research, but it's been pretty consistent and is really strong now, is that most of us, our sexuality is fluid, you know, so we might be mostly wired mostly this way or mostly that way. That's a thing for sure. But our capacity to get turned on and our capacity for, especially for the imaginative part of sex, which for a lot of people is where kink fits into it, is because it really encompasses the physical and the mental in ways that perhaps traditional sex doesn't as much. That when we can give ourselves permission to go into these rich places that we might not do in our physical life, but we will enjoy watching it, or we'll enjoy talking about it, or we'll, you know, watching porn with genders that we wouldn't normally associate with gives us permission to explore aspects of our sexuality in a really safe and nourishing way without freaking ourselves out. It's a great
Yeah.
way to trial different things.
Mm-hmm.
And just see how it feels.
Yeah.
How it feels in your body, you
Yeah.
know, and have that sort of, you know, we call it a somatic connection. So you're watching, if you're a heterosexual woman watching gay porn and just kind of going, wow, you know, what happens to your body when you watch it?
Mm-hmm.
And or if you're, I know a lot of gay men who watch straight porn,
Mm-hmm.
and they have no intention of having sex with cis women, but they enjoy watching. No, they enjoy watching the boobs flop around or the stuff that they enjoy. Who knows, you know? But there's a thing, and it's not necessarily anything to hyper analyze. It's
Mm-hmm.
just something to enjoy, because sex is supposed to be, well, sex is about a lot of things, and one of them is pleasure, you know.
Yep.
So
Very interesting. I always found this sort of, since we just have a couple minutes left, the idea of kink play and using a pervertible
Ah,
If
yes.
you don't know what a pervertible is, it is something that is not meant to be a sex toy. Excuse me, a sex toy, but it's just laying around your house. So like a
Yeah.
wooden spoon, you can smack your ass with it. Or I
A hair
cannot tell you
tie.
how many things that I have found in my place and that people have shown me where I've gone, oh, right. I mean, you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
one that you just installed, your bidet.
Oh my God, my bidet. That's what I've done this week. I've spent
Right?
hours just sitting on the toilet, just going, oh my
Getting the
God, this is
bidet.
fabulous.
Shower heads. Yeah, squeeze the shower heads. Exactly. So it's kind of like no money fun.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? What else? I had a lover bring me an extendable shoehorn. And it's like this big. God, it's
Where did
right
you put
there.
it?
He would smack me with it.
Oh, I thought you were using it as an insertable. I was like, oh, wow.
No.
No.
No. That's not going in my vagina or my ass. I can tell you that. No shoehorns. Shoehorns in my butt.
Safer sex, everybody. Safer sex.
I just saw though something called an Amish fly swatter on Amazon, and
Amish, as
like,
in AMISH.
yeah, like the Amish.
Wow.
And it is like a leather, swatter area, and a wooden handle, and the leather is red. It just looks super kinky.
Wow.
It looks like it was literally made for that. So,
Wow, a little bit of the old Amish fly swatter, if you know what I mean.
Amish fly swatter, I believe, isn't that a sexual innuendo?
When you do Curvy Girl Sex Volume 2,
That's
you're
right.
gonna
This is the fly swatter.
pervertibles.
Oh my God. Jesus. But yeah, so if you guys, in this last minute, if you have any ideas for pervertibles that we may not have heard of, that actually probably would have been a great question.
I've seen cling film used to tie people's hands together.
Saran wrap for those of us who were not born in Australia.
Oh yeah, sorry. What do you know? You don't call it cling film?
No.
Oh, in Australia we call it gland wrap, actually, but that's a whole other thing. And what else? Yeah, I mean, a lot of kitchen stuff, forks, and anybody who sews,
the
pinwheels,
pinwheel. Yeah.
Lots of those things. You know, in a past life before I was a sex therapist, I was a costume designer.
Yes.
I had 3 pinwheels. I have none now, but I used to have a lot of sharp, spiky objects that were for sewing. Now I have sharp, spiky things for other activities.
Of course you do. Someone just said wooden clothespins for pinching. Those are great.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we have come to the end yet again.
Yet again. And so next week is our last one for a month.
Yeah.
So we would love it if you tell us what you want us to talk about next month.
Yeah.
Or maybe, I don't know, maybe we could have we'll have a general thing or
just a general thing, and people can ask us questions of any sort.
Anything.
And,
and then we're going to have May off.
Then we'll have May off. That's my fault. I am sorry. I am taking May off. All right, friends. Lovely spending time with you.
Lovely spending time with all of you, and you, my dear wife, looking lovely. Is that polka dots? Are they balloons? What's on your shirt today? Cute. Nice. I've actually got my bazungas out, but you can't see them. I know. I have to be like, next time, maybe I'll totally get my bazungas out next time. For those of you who are interested in bazungas, put them on the glass. Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.